Picture this. A town, once alive with laughter and labor, suddenly reduced to silence. No warning. No goodbye. One day it is there. Homes, families, children at play. And the next, nothing. The streets are empty. Dinner tables are still set, as though the families stepped away only for a moment. Books lie open on school desks. A rocking chair sways gently on a porch, though no one sits upon it. But where are the people? This is not a ghost story told to frighten children. It is a mystery rooted in history, one that has haunted records and whispered legends for over a century. A town that thrived on industry, a community that trusted in the promise of hard work and neighborly bonds. And then, in the span of a single night, all of it vanished. Some say it was disaster, an accident buried by powerful men who feared the truth would ruin them. Others whisper of military experiments, strange technologies, and secret relocations that erased the town from maps. But there are still those who believe something else entirely. That the town was not destroyed, that it did not die, that it slipped away into another time, another dimension, leaving only its empty shell behind. Tonight, we travel back to that forgotten valley. We will walk through its history, speak of its people, and trace the moments leading up to that fateful night. And as we uncover each layer of this mystery, one question will remain. What happened to the town that disappeared overnight? Before we begin, take a moment to imagine. Imagine you live there, in a quiet wooden home with smoke curling from the chimney. Your children are asleep, the fire flickers low, and outside, the wind carries the smell of pine and coal dust. You do not know it, but this is the last night your town will ever exist. When dawn comes, silence will reign, not because of war, not because of fire, but because everything you know will be gone. This is not the first time in history entire communities have disappeared. In America, we remember Roanoke, the colony that vanished without a trace in the 16th century, leaving behind only the word Croton carved into a post. In Europe, legends tell of villages swallowed whole by plague or abandoned in fear of curses. But in each case, historians offered explanations: famine, disease, migration. This town is different. For here, the explanations do not hold. The people did not flee in panic. They did not leave together in wagons or on horseback. They did not burn their homes, nor take their belongings. Everything was left behind, waiting as though frozen in time. And yet, the people were gone. When neighboring townsfolk came to investigate, they described a scene that made no sense. Clocks had stopped ticking. Wells were filled with clean water, untouched. Animals roamed freely, confused, but alive. But not a single human being was ever found. The deeper investigators looked, the stranger it became. Records disappeared. Files went missing. And soon, it seemed that history itself was being rewritten to erase the place entirely. But we remember. And tonight, so will you. This is the story of the town that disappeared overnight. And as we step into its forgotten streets, ask yourself, what force has the power to erase a community? Was it nature? Was it man? Or was it something we were never meant? Long before its disappearance, the town was alive with promise. It began, like many others, with land and opportunity. Families seeking new beginnings traveled through forests, across rivers, and over rugged terrain until they reached the valley. The soil was fertile. The river was strong and full of fish. And beneath the ground, there were whispers of valuable minerals waiting to be mined. It did not take long for cabins to rise from the earth. Logs were cut, roofs were built, and smoke began to curl from chimneys. The sound of hammers and saws echoed through the valley. And soon, what had once been wilderness transformed into a settlement. At first, it was small. A few families, a cluster of homes. But word spread quickly. More settlers arrived, drawn by the promise of work and stability. A blacksmith set up shop, his forge burning bright. A general store opened, carrying everything from nails to flour. Soon after came a schoolhouse, where children sat on rough wooden benches and learned their letters by candlelight. The people worked hard, but they also celebrated hard. They held barn dances, Sunday gatherings, and festivals that brought everyone together. Neighbors knew one another by name, and children ran freely between homes, safe in the watchful eyes of the entire community. The town grew, and with it came prosperity. Mining companies took interest in the valley. Contracts were signed. New jobs appeared. Men worked the mines by day, their hands black with coal and stone, while women ran shops, taught classes, and cared for their families. The railway came next. With it, the town was no longer isolated. Supplies flowed in. Exports flowed out. The valley was now connected to the wider world. With prosperity came pride. The townspeople built larger homes, painted white with porches and gardens. They planted trees along the main road. The church was built tall and proud, its bell calling families to worship on Sundays. Evenings were filled with laughter spilling from taverns, the clinking of glasses, and the strum of fiddles echoing into the night. To live there was to believe in a future, a place where children could grow strong, where fortunes could be made, and where every hand contributed to the strength of the community. And yet, even in its early days, there were whispers. Some said the valley was different, that the land itself carried an energy, an unseen current that pulsed beneath the soil. Farmers spoke of tools that broke too easily, animals that behaved strangely, and nights when the air felt too still, as if waiting. But such talk was brushed aside. Who cared for stories of strange energy when there was money to be made and futures to be built? For decades, the town flourished. Generations were born, grew old, and were buried in its cemetery. Each year, more families came. Each year, the valley's name spread farther. By the turn of the century, it was no longer just a small settlement. It was a thriving town, marked on maps, visited by traders, and admired for its resilience. But beneath the prosperity, something darker lingered. Strange reports circulated quietly, never officially recorded, yet always remembered by those who lived there. Fires that started without cause, then extinguished themselves. Lights in the forest that moved with intelligence, never explained. People who vanished for a day or two, then reappeared, unable to remember where they had been. These incidents were dismissed as superstition, exaggerations, or the stress of hard labor. The town had no time for mysteries. It had business to run, children to raise, and a future to build. Still, those who listened closely knew that not everything was as it seemed. Old stories told by the first settlers spoke of the valley as a place that should never have been touched, a place where the earth was thin and where things could slip through. But prosperity has a way of silencing warnings. And so life went on. The town celebrated weddings, births, and holidays. It grew busier with each passing year. And if strange events occurred, they were quickly forgotten in the joy of progress. But history would prove that the whispers were not just stories. The land carried secrets. Secrets that would one day swallow the town whole. For now, though, we remember it at its height. A proud community, alive with laughter and hope. A town that believed it would last forever. No one knew that its shining days were numbered. No one knew that the same land which gave them life would one day take it all away. Every story of tragedy begins with warnings, subtle signs, moments that pass unnoticed until it is too late to turn back. For the town, those signs began quietly. A missing person here, a strange sound there. Nothing strong enough to cause alarm, yet unsettling enough to stir whispers over dinner tables and in taverns. The first disappearance was written off as a runaway. A young man, restless, eager to see the world beyond the valley. When he did not return, people shook their heads, sighed, and carried on. After all, he had always dreamed of leaving. But then came another disappearance, and another. Not just restless youth, but mothers, fathers, respected members of the community. And with each case, there were no tracks, no signs of struggle, no evidence at all. It was as though the earth had swallowed them whole. At night, strange lights were seen above the tree line. Soft, glowing orbs that drifted silently through the sky, then vanished without sound. Some called them lanterns, tricks of the moonlight, or the glow of miners working late underground. But others knew better. They had seen them up close. They had watched the lights move with intent, as though they were alive. The animals knew it too. Dogs that once guarded homes faithfully began to cower, barking at shadows no one else could see. Cattle refused to drink from certain streams, staring instead into the distance, as though sensing something their owners could not. Birds migrated early, leaving the skies eerily empty when they should have been filled with song. The land itself seemed to change. Some mornings, the air carried an odd metallic taste, like iron and ash. Wells that had always produced clear, sweet water sometimes yielded liquid that smelled faintly of sulfur. Farmers reported fields where crops would grow tall and healthy, then suddenly wither overnight, with no explanation. At first, the townsfolk ignored these things. They had lived through harsh winters, floods, and mine collapses. They believed themselves strong enough to endure anything. But slowly, the unease grew harder to dismiss. One night, the church bell rang by itself. The rope was still untouched, yet the bell tolled again and again, echoing through the valley. Families woke, stepping out of their homes in confusion. The sound lasted nearly an hour, before stopping as suddenly as it had begun. The next morning, the pastor refused to enter the church. He claimed something had changed within its walls, though he would not say what. Then came the sickness. It was not a disease anyone could name. It struck suddenly, leaving victims pale, weak, and unable to rise from bed. Yet just as suddenly as it came, it vanished, leaving no trace. Doctors could not explain it. Some said it was exhaustion from long work in the mines. Others feared it was a curse, a punishment for ignoring the strange warnings of the land. Still, the town pressed forward. Children went to school. Men returned to the mines. Women opened their shops and baked bread for their neighbors. Life continued. But beneath the surface, fear was growing. Elders began telling old stories once more. Stories of the valley being a thin place, where the boundary between worlds was weak. They spoke of spirits wandering freely, of shadows that listened, and of the danger of staying too long in a place that was never meant to be settled. The younger generation dismissed such tales as superstition. But in the quiet of night, when the wind carried strange whispers, even the bravest admitted unease. The signs became bolder. Tools left neatly on workbenches were found scattered the next morning, as if thrown in anger. Doors that had been locked were discovered wide open, with no footprints leading to or from them. Clocks stopped at the same hour each night, their ticking silenced as though time itself held its breath. And then there were the dreams. Dozens of townsfolk, who did not speak to one another, began to describe the same vision. A sky filled with fire, a loud humming sound, deep and unearthly, and a voice whispering words they could not understand. The dreams left them shaken, sleepless, and hollow-eyed. Some believed it was prophecy. Others feared it was madness spreading like an infection. But whatever it was real. Too many had seen it. Too many had heard the voice. The town was being warned, but no one knew by whom or by what. And so, they lived with the fear, day by day, week by week, never speaking of it too loudly, but never free of it either. The town still laughed, still worked, still celebrated weddings and births. But beneath every smile was a shadow of dread. Everyone felt it. Something was coming, something they could not escape. It began like any other evening. The sun dipped low, painting the valley gold. Families gathered around dinner tables. Children played in the fading light. Fires crackled in hearths, sending warmth into the autumn air. But as night fell, something shifted. The silence was too deep. The wind, too still. The air, heavy with an energy that seemed to press against the skin. At first, no one noticed. The town carried on, eating, laughing, praying. But as the hours passed, the strangeness grew impossible to ignore. Clocks stopped. All at once, their hands frozen at the same exact time. Dogs whined, scratching at doors, desperate to be let out. Horses stamped and kicked in their stalls, eyes rolling wide with panic. The birds, what few remained, took flight into the darkness, fleeing as if from an unseen predator. Then came the sound, a low hum, deep and resonant, as though the earth itself had begun to sing. It grew louder, vibrating through the walls of every home, rattling glasses, shaking lamps. The children cried. Parents whispered prayers. No one knew what it was, but all knew it was not of this world. The hum rose higher, sharper, until it pierced the air like a blade. And then, the lights. They appeared above the tree line, glowing orbs that pulsed and shifted, moving in strange patterns no human hand could control. Some hovered, some spun in slow circles. Others darted like fireflies across the night sky. People poured into the streets, staring upward in horror and awe. The lights grew brighter, until night was turned to day. Faces were illuminated, pale and terrified, as the town was bathed in an unnatural glow. And then, silence. The hum stopped. The lights froze, hanging motionless above the valley. The world held its breath. In that moment, everything changed. A blinding flash erupted, white and consuming, swallowing every street, every house, every soul. It was not fire, nor lightning, nor anything that could be named. It was as if the very fabric of reality had torn open, pulling the town into its depths. Neighbors reached for one another, hands outstretched. And then, nothing. No screams, no cries, no sound of running feet, just silence. When dawn broke, the valley lay empty. The houses stood untouched. Meals were still warm on tables. Candles still flickered in windows. Chairs rocked slowly on porches, as though their owners had just risen. But the people were gone. No footprints led away. No wagons had been packed. No horses had been taken. It was as if every man, woman, and child had vanished into thin air. Neighbors from nearby towns came searching. They walked the empty streets in disbelief. They entered homes, calling names into the silence. They opened doors, expecting someone, anyone, to answer. But there was no one left to hear. The wells still held clean water. The fields were still green. The church bell tower stood tall, its ropes swaying lightly in the morning breeze. The town was intact in every way, except for the absence of its people. The search widened. Forests, rivers, mines. Everywhere was combed. Not a single body was found. Not a single clue remained. It was as though the entire town had been plucked from the earth, leaving only its shell behind. In the days that followed, fear spread through the region. Some claimed it was punishment, divine retribution for sins committed in secret. Others whispered of experiments, governments testing weapons or technologies too dangerous to reveal. And still others believed the valley itself had taken back what was never meant to be claimed. But the truth? No one ever discovered it. The town was abandoned, its name erased from maps, its story buried in silence, told only in hushed whispers and forgotten records. All that remains is the mystery. A thriving community, hundreds of lives, gone in a single night. And so we ask again, what happened to the town that disappeared overnight? Was it an accident of nature? A crime of man? Or was it something far greater? Something we were never meant to understand? The disappearance shook the region to its core. At first, disbelief ruled. Neighbors who had walked into the valley that morning could not comprehend what they saw. They touched the homes, the furniture, the belongings, as if expecting the people to return at any moment. But the silence was complete. News spread quickly. Riders carried the story to nearby towns. Soon, Investigators arrived, lawmen, journalists, and opportunists eager for a headline. Each one expected to uncover a simple explanation, but none did. The homes were untouched, the shops still stocked. Even money lay in drawers, uncollected, as though its owners had stepped out for only a moment. Everything was in order, except for the absence of life. Fear took root. Families in nearby towns locked their doors at night. Some refused to enter the valley at all, fearing that whatever had taken the townsfolk might take them too. Others came only to steal, abandoning their fear in the face of greed, stripping homes of tools, furniture, and valuables. But even the thieves admitted something was wrong. Many swore that as they carried items away, they felt watched. Some claimed to hear whispers in empty rooms. One thief returned everything he had taken, convinced the objects were cursed. The official investigation yielded nothing. No signs of violence. No evidence of mass departure. No records of wagons or carts leaving the area. The people were simply gone. And so, theories began to spread. The first was disease. Some suggested a sudden plague had swept through, forcing survivors to flee in panic. But if that were true, where were the bodies? Where were the graves? And why had the sick not left signs in the homes? Another theory was natural disaster. Perhaps a landslide, an earthquake, or a toxic gas leak from the mines. But the valley showed no scars. The homes still stood strong. The wells were untouched. The fields were green. Then came the human theories. Some whispered that the townsfolk had been relocated, taken by force, perhaps by a government testing weapons or conducting experiments in secret. The glowing lights, the hum in the earth, the missing records, all seemed to point towards something hidden, something powerful. But if that were true, why erase an entire town? And why leave everything else behind? Of course, the most chilling theory was not natural or human at all. It was the belief that the town had been swallowed by something otherworldly. Some claimed it was aliens, drawn to the valley for reasons unknown. The lights in the sky, the humming sound, the blinding flash. It fit too perfectly with tales told in later centuries of strange visitations. Others turned to the spiritual. They said the valley had always been cursed, a place where the boundary between this world and the next was thin. Perhaps the townsfolk had been claimed by spirits. Perhaps they had been drawn into another realm, leaving only their possessions behind. A rift, a portal, a tear in the fabric of reality. Unseen, unstoppable, unexplainable. For years, these theories grew, twisting and multiplying as each new storyteller added their voice. Some believed the townsfolk lived still, trapped in a place beyond our understanding, calling out for help that would never come. Others believed they had ceased to exist entirely, their lives snuffed out in a moment beyond comprehension. The valley itself became feared. Travelers avoided it. Maps erased it. Generations grew up hearing the legend, but never daring to set foot on its soil. But legends have power, and whispers have a way of surviving. Though officials tried to bury the story, it lived on in hushed conversations, in journal entries, and in tales told by firesides. A mystery too large to vanish completely. And so, the town that disappeared overnight became something more than a tragedy. It became a riddle, a puzzle left unsolved. A warning to those who would ignore the whispers of the land. What truly happened? No one can say for certain. But in the silence of that valley, the questions remain. Questions that echo through time, drawing us back again and again to the mystery. And perhaps that is the greatest truth of all, that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, that some stories remain in the shadows, untouchable, so that we never forget how fragile our world truly is. The story of the town that disappeared overnight is more than just a mystery. It is a reminder of how fragile our lives, our homes, and even our histories can be. For the people of that valley, life must have felt certain. They had homes, families, jobs, and a future to believe in. They built schools and churches, raised children, celebrated weddings, and mourned their dead in sacred ground. They lived as if tomorrow was guaranteed. And yet it was not. In a single night, everything they knew was taken. Not by war, not by fire, not by famine, but by something none of us can fully explain. We search for answers because we fear the silence. We build theories because the truth, whatever it was, remains beyond our reach. Some call it supernatural. Others say it was the hand of man. Still others believe it was a twist of nature itself, a rare and terrible event never repeated. But the truth is this: we do not know, and perhaps we never will. What we do know is that the town was real. Its people were real. Their laughter, their struggles, their dreams, all real. And then, gone, like a candle blown out in the dark. It leaves us with a haunting question. If it could happen to them, could it happen again? Could there be places in this world still waiting to reveal their secrets? Thin places where the boundary between worlds bends, and where entire communities might be swallowed whole. We live in a world full of wonders, but also full of shadows. And sometimes, those shadows reach out farther than we dare to believe. As we close this story, imagine the valley now. Silent, overgrown, the houses long since crumbled, the streets reclaimed by grass and trees. But if you listen closely, if you walk there in the stillness of night, you might feel it, that same hum in the earth, that same weight in the air, the presence of a story unfinished. And maybe, just maybe, the people are not gone at all. Maybe they are still there, waiting in a place just beyond our sight, caught between the world they knew and a world we cannot reach. Until the mystery is solved, the legend lives on. It warns us, it fascinates us, and it humbles us. For in the end, the greatest mysteries are not about ghosts or aliens, governments or curses. They are about us, our fear of the unknown, our hunger for truth, and our deep, unshakable need to believe that everything happens for a reason. But sometimes things happen for no reason at all. And that is the most terrifying thought of all. The town that disappeared overnight remains a riddle without an answer. A story half written, half lost. And as long as it remains unsolved, it will live on. In whispers, in legends, and in the imaginations of those who hear it. So the next time you walk through a quiet place, the next time you feel the air grow heavy, the next time silence lingers too long, ask yourself, is it just silence? Or is it the echo of a story the world has tried to forget? Remember the town, remember its people, and remember that even in the brightest valleys, the shadows are never far away.